So let's get really real about one thing when it comes to relationships. And it doesn't matter what type of relationship we're talking about here. It can be platonic, romantic, familiar, doesn't matter. But that one thing that is so powerful when it comes to relationships is the power of vulnerability. Deciding to allow yourself to be vulnerable and then receive the same level of vulnerability from the other person is the ultimate act of trust and love. We all know that ogres are like onions, but so are people. And when we let ourselves and others be vulnerable, well, it's like peeling away the layers to reveal our truest selves. The messy, the beautiful, the imperfectly perfect parts with all of our eccentricities. Being vulnerable means letting someone see you, the real, authentic you, all your quirkiness, your dreams, your fears. That's a very scary thing, I know. It takes a really brave soul to open themselves up to that. But here's the secret, that's exactly where the magic happens in relationships. When we open up, it's also giving our partners, friends, or whomever the opportunity to feel brave enough to open up too. And this creates far more meaningful connections that can weather any storm. And when we create more meaningful connections, we create unity between ourselves and our fellow humans. So when I got into my new relationship after the relationship trauma I'd experienced, going through a hot mess marriage and the divorce that followed, opening up to another person felt like a very shitty idea. Not only did I not want to be open and vulnerable, I didn't even really want a serious relationship because that last one had been a nightmare. But I held space for his vulnerability because listening and seeing people is one of my gifts. And in doing so, it made me feel comfortable with doing the same for him. And he returned that gift and held space for me. And because of that, we now have a beautifully deep and meaningful relationship that I didn't even think was possible. Now, imagine walking into a room where every single person is wearing a mask. Not just any mask, but one that hides their true feelings, their desires, and their fears. Now, think about how you navigate that room. Do you feel connected, understood, or do you feel isolated, even though you're surrounded by people? That's what life without vulnerability feels like in our relationships, like a masquerade ball where no one really knows who's behind the mask. Now let's flip that script. What if one by one we started to drop those masks? Initially, it's going to be really scary, right? It's like showing up to a costume party and you're the only one who didn't dress up. But then something truly incredible starts to happen. You start to see people for who they genuinely are. And even more amazing, they see you. And that's what we all really want, right? And then suddenly, you're not just surface level acquaintances. You're co adventurers on the journey of life, and you're sharing stories that weave your hearts together in ways you never even imagined. But why is vulnerability seen as such a daunting task? In our society, we often equate vulnerability with weakness. But in reality, it's really one of the most courageous acts we can perform. It's the decision to say, here I am with all of my flaws, and to invite someone else to do the same. And when we open ourselves up to vulnerability, we foster an environment where genuine connection not only blooms, but thrives. Here's the kicker though. Being vulnerable doesn't mean oversharing or throwing emotional caution to the wind. That would be wild. It's about calculated risk, calculated risk taking in your relationships. It's choosing to share our feelings with someone who has earned the right to hear them. and creating mutual exchange of trust and respect while we still maintain our boundaries. It's a dance of give and take, and it forms the bedrock of our most cherished relationships. And sure, the path of vulnerability is littered with the possibility of getting hurt. There's no doubt about that. But, no guts, no glory. The depth of connection and understanding and love that comes from being open is worth the gamble. Let's face it, life is way too short to spend it at a distance from those we care about, don't you think? So, next time you're at the edge of opening up, take a deep breath and remember, the most profound connections come from our willingness to be truly and deeply seen. Embrace your vulnerability as the superpower that it is, and watch your relationships transform in the most beautiful and unexpected ways. So here's to kind of throwing caution to the wind and embracing our beautiful mess together. Are you ready to take the plunge and open up in a way you never thought you could before? Slide into the comments or DM me your thoughts on Instagram, Threads, or Facebook. I'm on all those. And let's make vulnerability our superpower.